I like shorts.
They're comfy.
And easy to wear.
Okay, I think that's good. Welcome, boys. Hey, fellas. Guess what I'm here to talk to you guys about right now?
Diglett?
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yes, that's correct. No, Diglett is not here. We have, he was escorted out of the building after some incidents involving a Doug trio. We are under NDA and can technically not speak about it. But, besides that, we're all good. Howdy, fellas. Welcome to a new generation of Pokemon. Who's excited? I'm excited. Christian, are you excited about a new generation of Pokemon?
I am so excited, I cannot take it.
Oh no.
Austin, what about you? Are you feeling, like this is a little too Poketame or a little Poketacular?
Let's go somewhere in the middle. I'm pretty excited to keep getting through things. Yes, and win,
good.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, a new generation, a new year, kind of ish. Technically, the last one rolled over, but that's okay. Welcome, ladies and Poke gentlemen, to Generation 3. I wanted to start off with, I know we always do this, but yeah, first impressions. It's a new game. We're on new hardware. Silver, I think Gold, Silver, and Crystal, we said really had kind of a pretty big visual improvement. We all commented on that, but Austin, I want to hear from you. What do you think about the leap from Gen 2 to Gen 3 in terms of like presentation, visuals, and all that kind of stuff?
It's starting to feel a lot more like home, to be honest. Since growing up, my Pokemon games were Gen 4. A lot of the visual aesthetics are very similar to Gen 4, so I feel like this is where that feel started, was Gen 3, it seems like. And it is definitely has me in a lot better high spirits going through it.
Nice. Christian, what about you? How are you feeling? Is this nostalgic for you at all? Is this returning home, or is this a new experience for you?
I feel like I am finally home in my Poke home with my Poke pals. Gen 3 was what I grew up with, so being able to finally see the classic in my eyes graphics and all the bright colors and everything is music to my Poke ears.
Oh,
yeah.
Man. Is this going to be this whole evening?
Well, yeah, probably. We're all tired. This is what it is. Listen, you knew what you signed up for when you signed up for this, and by signed up, I mean I bullied you into it. But overall, I definitely agree with kind of the takes here. Like, oh man, original opinion. This is. It's really fascinating because I was doing a little bit of research on this, because Pokemon really was said to have, by a lot of people, fallen off after Gen 2. But for me, when we got to Gen 3, whether I like it or not, and we'll get into that later, at least presentationally, I'm like, oh, we're finally back to like what I'm used to. This is Pokemon. I keep calling as a joke in my notes the first two gens Protomon, because it feels like a prototype for what it's going to become, but this finally feels like we're kind of at, real modern Pokemon. And a funny note, just got some trivia here. I hope you've got some trivia here, Christian, but I've got a piece of trivia. You mentioned the bright colors. And part of that is because they're doing a more tropical location here, right? But a big part of it also might be attributed to the fact that the Game Boy Advance screen was notoriously dark, right? And so a lot of developers compensated by making near garish level, like, bright colors. If we get some other Game Boy Advance games, especially if we're looking at maybe the Castlevania series at some point, we might see, like, it is truly nearly unwatchable on modern screens because it was designed to compensate against the really dark screen. I didn't feel this approach to garish, especially Austin, looking at what you had to deal with Pokemon Yellow. That truly was garish.
Oh,
but it is noticeably brighter. But I even think on modern displays, it actually has a nice look to it. It felt, like you said, coming home. It feels really familiar. I really feel like they kind of finally got the visual style down and pat. And I mean, looking into the future, this kind of feels like what it's going to end up being going forward. So yeah, any other comments on kind of like the audio, any opinions on like the differences in how the sound effects are, the music, or anything else in the visuals? Christian, any opinions on that?
I mean, I enjoy literally everything is nostalgic. Everything from like the noise effects, the music, it all just sends me back to elementary school. I get out of class and I play my Game Boy on the way home, or while I'm waiting for my sibling. So it just tons and tons of nostalgia has been hitting so far, and I have been loving every minute of it.
That's fantastic. Austin, I know you were more, even though you've played Gen 3, you were more into Gen 4, but even the Game Boy games, you mentioned visually, the similarities, but any opinions on the music, as you are kind of informal music man over here?
Well, I'm gonna have to probably go back and refresh myself with the mind, since I play this mostly while I am on work or in fast forward mode. I don't actually hear a whole lot right now. So I gotta take some time and actually run it not on fast forward when I can pay attention to it, and then I might actually have an opinion on that.
Alright, I'll send y'all some YouTube clips maybe for the next one or whatever. Yeah, fast forward's definitely being utilized. I will say that. Now, this does feel faster than, I feel like, Gen 2 in a lot of ways. Especially with the running shoes. Oh my gosh, what a godsend on that. Like, I even have moments where, when it's not a straight line, I don't press the fast forward, and I just like, no, I can run around this and it feels like a good pace. Sure, sometimes with the battles or grinding, I'm still going to fast forward, but I do find myself fast forwarding a lot less personally. Although, Christian, you're probably having the exact opposite experience, if I understand correctly, since you're emulating this one and you were on 3DS hardware for the last two, right?
Yes, that's right. I am so fast. I have definitely been utilizing the fast forward, and sometimes I completely miss the building I was trying to go into because I've been going too fast.
You could pick a slower speed on that, you realize, right?
I gotta go fast.
Gotta go fast.
Oh my gosh.
I gotta be as fast as a quick attack.
It is. That's so funny. But yeah, so that's been pretty fun. I gotta admit, that is a problem with these games, like, just universally. We're 3 into this at this point. And I like a lot of turn-based games. I really do. Pokemon, I do feel that grind. Someone did, like, a breakdown that's, like, every move has, like, a visual effect, and then, like... So it's like the move will happen, and then, like, an attack will happen, and then the health bar will happen, and then text will pop up telling you what happened, and some people are like, just cut some of that down, because it does feel a lot. But, that's just one of the quirks that comes with the series at this point. Could it be better? Probably. Is it ruining the experience? Not when you're fast forwarding. So, yeah. I'm just looking at some of the other things, definitely. So yeah, we're nostalgic. Talking about music, I'll mention a little bit about that. It's infamous for its trumpeting sounds, which the Game Boy Advance really gets ragged on for its sound quality, and I get it. Especially, it's really hard on the thing because it did a lot of SNES ports, SNES games, and which had a really great sound chip, and then a lot of those got ported over to the Game Boy, and the Game Boy does some good things. There's great Game Boy music, but most of the great Game Boy music are on games that were designed for the Game Boy. When you're trying to port some of the SNES tunes over to a thing that was designed for it, it does get a little butchered sometimes. But these games were designed for the Game Boy, and even though some people make fun of what they call the farting trumpets, which is foreshadowing for another series we'll be handling later, obviously. But
We'll keep that locked in the basement for now.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. But it definitely... I still really enjoy the music. I am not playing always on fast forward a lot of times because I'm enjoying the music. It's probably... I like it a lot better than Gens 1 and Gens 2. This is the first time where I feel like, oh, I'd just listen to this music, actually. Like, if you put it on YouTube channel, like your background music, I'd listen to that. I enjoy it a lot. I guess you two cretins didn't slow down enough to even smell the roses or listen to the tunes, so that's homework for next time, you two, but yeah.
I'm just listening to it right now.
Oh, okay. As you're listening to it, any opinions, Austin?
Yeah, putting this up, this is like probably one of the more traditional Pokemon battle themes that my mind just starts humming if I try to like recreate a Pokemon battle theme. So this is probably where the music starts becoming more familiar territory as well.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh yeah, this exact rhythm and melody lines, like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there was a directorial change from Gen 2 to Gen 3, and then that guy, I'm going to put it up on screen, I think it's Masuda, but if I'm wrong, I'll edit it, took over the series, and he's been the lead, like, director on Pokemon ever since, so there's kind of a reason the sensibilities of this game carry forward, is because the guy that ended up running the whole series from this point on took over here, so it kind of makes some sense. I think the last thing I want to touch on in terms of first impressions before we move on to some of the nittier, grittier stuff is, what do y'all think about kind of the map we've got dealing with here so far? Well, I guess we should clarify. We made it up to Gen 4, all of us. That's how far we went. So that's kind of we're about halfway through the game in terms of gym progression. And so far with what we've experienced, what are y'all thinking map design-wise? I feel like it's a lot more linear than the last two. But Austin, where are you feeling kind of with this map? Noticing differences? It just feels like Pokemon to you.
Well, I am the notorious one at this point for getting lost all the time. I am really bad at knowing which way I need to go in Pokemon games. You probably realize this with my constant messages. Where do I go? Where do I go? I don't know where to go. That is holding true even in this gen. In terms of, like, the visual layouts of the map area, I am not having any issues with it. It does still feel like, in terms of, like, map layout, the same as every other Pokemon game, in my opinion, so far. I'm still getting just as lost. There's still the general, like, go this way, blah, 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 blah. The nice change of pace, though, was I did enjoy going to the volcano. That felt a little bit different.
Yeah.
And the only other upset part that I got about that is I didn't realize I had to take the ski lift after doing all this stuff, so I jumped through the unreturnable pathway of the cliffside, and then I had to go all the way around to the shortcut that I never discovered, had to fight my way back tooth and nail just to progress again. So I got lost, did things very inoptimally, but I enjoyed the volcano.
Nice.
I made mild fun of you, but also I did the same thing. I realized I was going back through my notes, and I actually did, even though I said quite... You said, where the heck is that? And I said, I don't mean to sound rude, but if you want to be less lost, try talking to NPCs. But then I was looking back through my notes, and I actually did the same thing, so I don't know if that was great convenience. I did manage to go back to... I realized pretty quickly I needed to turn around, but I also did jump down the unjumpable path. Yeah, Christian, it looked like you kind of figured it out on your own. Have you had trouble navigating so far?
I haven't had trouble. I did go down the unreturnable path, but I had the I used the like aggro bike to jump up the little section on the side.
Ooh.
So a cool little feature there with your bike choice, because it's the first one where you get to actually choose between the two different types of bikes. But in terms of just map design and linearity, like, I felt like it was a really good design. I do agree that it was a little more linear than the previous games. And I thoroughly enjoyed, like, the volcano section. I like that in this new gen they're implementing things like weather into the map.
Oh yeah.
Like the ash, and how going through the tall grass, it's like ashy, but then after you walk through it turns green. That's a cool little fun feature in there. So it definitely seems like they, with Gen 3, really pushed to include more weather effects and make this map much more diverse compared to kind of the standard maps that they had previously. From my perspective, at least.
Yeah, I think there's a much greater biome diversity as well. That's a really solid point. It does feel like there's a nice little section for every kind of type, and you're likely to find, yeah, like maybe it's a little incongruous that you just like walk around, it's like, oh, here's the desert, but you know, next to the volcano, next to the beachfront. But like, my understanding is it's not too far off from the actual area, and I will happily take a little incongruity in a couple corners of the map to get the variety that we've gotten of the Pokemon here, I feel like. But yeah, okay, so actually, and you mentioned the weather effects, which is actually a great segue to the next thing I want to talk about, which is the new features. Like I did last gen, I kind of want to ask everyone, and I'll start with you, Christian, what's your favorite new feature added in this generation so far?
Oh, I mean, there's definitely a lot that they added in this in this gen.
But do you have a favorite?
I've really enjoyed the double battles. I just, in terms of nostalgia and just all the games I played growing up, that was a section that I always really enjoyed, being able to pair two complementary Pokemon together. So I'd say that's probably my favorite feature so far.
That's dope. I'll give mine next. Double battles are really cool. I feel like they're underutilized, so they might be my favorite in concept, but I don't know that I love the execution here just because they're so rare that I kind of feel like what's the point of doing double battle strategies? And I wanted different answers, so I'll say... you know what, I'll say this. Even though it's not the most interesting one, I'm gonna be honest. Running shoes are probably my favorite thing. I love just being able to press B and just, like, not... that pace. I know we're fast-forwarding, so y'all probably aren't feeling that as much as I am, but I'm trying to, where I can, play at the normal pace, and it just feels so much better with the running shoes. It is a night and day difference for me. But yeah. Austin, what about you? What's your favorite new feature? And then, if it's one of the ones we picked, pick another one and lie.
Well, I would lie if I knew what the other new features were. I'm having a really hard time recalling beyond what was already mentioned.
Just all there is
you
is double
my
battles.
running shoes option, because when I'm on ×10 fast forward trying to grind, and I can press the B button to go even further beyond, it's a fun experience when it comes to grinding Pokemon.
That's fantastic. I'll mention a couple of the other new features then, which aren't any of our favorites, but are, I think, worth mentioning here, and maybe some of these will pique your interest, Austin. A lot of them are kind of subtle behind-the-scenes changes, which is really interesting. They really revamped IVs and EVs, which are individual values and effort values, and to make a very complex thing very simple. IVs basically give your Pokemon unique hidden stats that will make two that are exactly the same level and exactly the same, species have slightly different stats. Not incredibly different, but like, one will be a little better at attacking, one will be a little faster, that kind of a deal, with the intent that it makes every Pokemon feel unique. And effort values basically means your Pokemon will specialize just slightly in some of those stats based on what it fights. So if you're fighting a bunch of big bulky dudes, your Pokemon will get a little bit more health on each level up than he would otherwise. And if he's fighting really quick people, a little bit more speed, that kind of a deal. But all this is really under the hood and hidden, with I think the intent being that, each person's individual playthrough is going to give them with a team that really feels unique to them, which I think is a really admirable idea. But if you're into the competitive scene, what it means is you want to min-max these things to the point of spending dozens and dozens and dozens of hours just doing like really specific tedious work to make your Pokemon technically optimal.
Nobody got time for that.
Yeah, well, some people do. Some people do. It's not me though. So I love the idea for a casual playthrough. But I guess I kind of wish that, like, maybe when you went into competitive matches, that's what Showdown does. You'll notice we've been talking about things, and we've asked, like, what do we pick for IVs? And I've just said, even though I know this isn't correct because I didn't want to deal with it, I said, just leave them at maximum. I kind of wish there was a setting for that, where, like, maybe for the story you get your individual creatures, but when you were to do competitive battles or something like that, you could just click everything max, like, rather than trying, because my understanding is most competitive people end up just hacking them in anyway. Do you guys have any experience or opinions on kind of the way IVs or EVs handled? Did you even know those were a thing? I didn't until I started digging into them a lot more with the series.
I mean, I knew they were a thing, but I never really cared about them enough. I always had the mental thought of them as just that kind of hidden stat thing that can be kind of manipulated, but who cares? Yeah. And that's how I've always viewed those stats.
Yeah. What about you, Christian?
I would 100% agree with Austin. Like, I definitely knew they existed, but I didn't kind of put in the time to understand exactly how they work. Honestly, I just thought some Pokemon just naturally had different stats than others, and that I didn't realize that, like you said, that if you fight a more bulky Pokemon, their health may increase more versus speed. I honestly didn't know that, so this is something you're telling me for the first time.
Yeah, it does a lot that isn't conveyed in the game, and I think for our casual playthroughs it doesn't really matter, but stats like these and the two I'm going to talk about in just a second make me feel like I don't ever want to do competitive Pokemon. Not that I was super excited about it anyway, but like, sometimes I look at a game, like Resident Evil's a good example, and I'm like, I'm going to do a casual speedrun of that. It's just interesting. I understand the mechanics enough, they're approachable enough, and beating the main game felt me equipped enough to start taking that next step to some of the harder challenges. But I really feel like if there's a fault of Pokemon, and even harder in Gen 3, I hear it gets a bit better later, but especially in Gen 3, I think the biggest issue is there is a casual playthrough, and then there's like a competitive kind of hardcore scene. And both are very cool and interesting and great. But this series does a really terrible job of bridging you from the casual to the hardcore. It's like starting a whole new game with a whole new series of things, and there's not a lot in the main game that really prepares you for that kind of more hardcore thing. You have to go to guides or other people that understand this. You can't just kind of go, well, I beat the game, now I'm gonna go hardcore. No, like, you just have to start over and learn from scratch. So I guess that's a bit of a critique, but am I more glad these systems exist than they don't? Sure. I think it's neat that Pokemon have slightly different values. It just does discourage me from wanting to get more deep than just a casual look through in these, personally. But yeah, any other comments of that, or are you okay if I move on to the last two abilities? Or stats, or whatever?
I guess a final thought for me would be, like, just the naturally different kind of substats, I'm just going to call them substats for my general mindset, is kind of unique because they, like, for instance, on, like, a casual side of things, like, you're fighting a trainer or something, you have an identical Pokemon matchup, and you can think, like, well, mine's just bred better, or, like, the companionship I have with mine is stronger than the companionship with yours, I don't know. Something kind of goofy like that, where it's, like, the actual little meta stats about it can actually kind of back up some of that mentality in your head if you're just trying to have fun with it.
Yeah. I think, like, yeah, exactly what you talked about is a great example of why I think it works really well in casual play, and even casual competitions. But yeah, I do think it probably does more good than bad. That's a good point, Austin. Along those lines, and I maybe should toss them into two other things they added, which are abilities and natures. These are a lot more fun to me, even though they're also kind of stat crunching stuff, because they're a little more opaque. They're a little bit easier to understand. Natures basically each have a trade-off where every Pokemon, this is a new feature, where every Pokemon's been given, basically, you'll look at your Pokemon if y'all are, and you can look at some of the things, and it'll tell you its nature. For instance, my starter Pokemon, which we'll get into in a minute, has an adamant nature. And another one I have has a careful nature. And I think I have one more that's a bold nature. So these different natures, basically, by about 10 points, raise one stat and lower another. You're never going to get one that's, like, purely just raising stats or purely just lowering stats. But depending on what your Pokemon's good or bad at, what it's raising or lowering could be really important. For instance, if you have a Pokemon that's really focused on speed, but doesn't use its special attack very much at all for, reasons we'll get into, and you have a nature that raises special attack and lowers speed, that's really playing against your Pokemon. It's gonna cause it some problems. But it's another level of kind of uniqueness that I think is fun. But why I like this a bit more is it's right on the tin. When you catch it, it tells you these things. And I think that lends to some more understanding of kind of those systems. And then abilities are really interesting things where they kind of change, like, how your Pokemon works. Like, I've got one that's Lightning Rod, which means you draw in electrical moves. And then Torrent, ups water moves in a pitch. And then Spore, leaves spores on contact. Those are a few abilities I have on some Mons. And a lot of Pokemon have, like, the option to have one or the other. Some are just locked in on what they have, but a lot of them have one or the other. So it's another level of uniqueness that you can get. Did you get the one that has, may paralyze the opponent on touch, or did you get the one that's like Intimidate, which lowers their attack upon entering the battle? It just adds another level of uniqueness and strategy to think about these, but it's also, unlike EVs and IVs, really understandable on the tin. You can read it, get what it does, and apply it right away, even if you don't have like a wiki open in front of you. Christian, any thoughts on natures and abilities? Cool, don't like them, never thought about them before?
I absolutely love the abilities. I've done as I've been kind of planning out my team for this gen. That's something that has been a consideration of what are some of the cool abilities that are featured in this game. I think it's a great addition that makes the game just that much more fun, in my opinion, especially when you could have two of the same species with completely different abilities, because there are a couple that are that way, while there are some that every of that species has that ability. So it's interesting, and I also enjoy the fact that you don't know what their ability is until after you catch it. So if you're for me, once I catch a Pokemon, my rule is I cannot catch it again. So I'm bound to whatever ability I catch. Ooh. Which is kind of a disadvantage, but also I'm going to try to play into whatever ability I get by the luck of the draw. So I think it's a great new feature.
Yeah, that's a really neat thought there. I knew that you weren't reusing Pokemon for previous ones, but I didn't realize what that meant is, the first one you grab, you're keeping. So, man, that's a whole other level given this. There's some weight on that.
I'm gambling here.
Oh, man. Austin, what do you care about abilities and natures, or is it just kind of some flavor text?
Funny enough, I didn't know they existed until just now.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I genuinely
pulled up my emulator. It's like, what are these? What do I have?
That's so fantastic.
Check them out.
That's I do love that though, because I really do appreciate that, because I like the different perspectives where it's like some of us are trying to think about it and game around it, and some of us are just experiencing the adventure and just enjoying it. And it's like, my creature lowers defense on it, but you didn't really go through all the what does this mean? How can I play off the moves? You just kind of living your best life, man. And I really, that's good fun. But I think it's a neat new feature. I think I heard someone mention team building, and what? I want to talk about that. As we dig in, I want to bring up some stuff, an interesting fact about the Pokemon here. There's a lot of new Pokemon, a lot more than were added in Gold, and a lot more accessible. You don't see an old Gen 1 or Gen 2 Pokemon until, I think, somewhere after the second Gen? Or maybe you get a ways into the game before you even start seeing old Pokemon again. And that's because the game was originally intended as a hard reboot. At first, they were going to have no returning Pokemon, and then partway through, they decided to fill out the decks. They were going to have to bring in some old Pokemon, and then that brought in some other things. The original plan was not to bring in old ones because they knew they couldn't bring on Pokemon from the first two gens. It just wasn't feasible, they decided. But then they added them back in. But I think that's really going to impact how we build our teams. So, Christian, I'm curious, what's your team looking like so far, man?
Well, currently, I have caught 6 Pokemon.
Do you want to talk about what your starter is, too?
So, I'll start with my starter then, I guess. I started Gen 3 Grass type with Trico, and I'm big on picking names. I went for Martin.
Okay.
And the reason is, fun fact, if you're an insurance fan.
If you're an insurance fan! Okay.
So Trico is modeled after a gecko.
No!
Martin is the name of the Geico gecko. Fun fact.
Oh boy.
That's great.
all those insurance fanatics that also are Pokemon aficionados.
Oh, man.
That is me tipping my hat to you.
That's so good, dude.
So that was my first starter. Catching up to where he is now, he's evolved into a Grovel.
Is that the second form or the third?
Second. Maybe it's
Yeah, okay.
Grovyle?
Yeah.
I can't remember how it's pronounced.
Either way, well, whatever. Pronunciation's a crapshoot.
So I got him. I caught a Zigzagoon just as an HM slave, and I named him Bandit.
Oh, that's cute. Did you name him that because of the ability?
No, he just looks. He's got like the black over his eyes.
Yeah.
Looks kind of like a mask, like a raccoon. So
That's
I felt like Bandit fit. I also went on to catch an Aron. How do you?
yeah. I don't know.
The little iron Pokemon.
Yeah.
Who I named How Ironic.
What?
Iron.
How iron? Oh my gosh!
Iron it.
That's so bad. I love it. Oh man, these are dad powers I have not caught up to at this point.
You underestimate my power.
Man.
So I caught him. I also, in the same area, caught a Sableye. The diamond-eyed Pokemon. And I... Yes. And I named her I See You.
Oh no.
EYE. See You. I caught a seagull, but I just caught it just because I felt like I needed to have a flying type.
He actually makes. Oh, go on. Sorry.
I ended up just putting it in the PC as I collected more Pokemon and better planned out my team. Because I have 2 other members of my team currently. I'm not entirely certain what my endgame team is going to look like, but this is what we're at right now. I also caught a Numel, the little camel-looking fire type, and I named him... Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say one of like 4 available fire types in this region.
Yeah, they really limit you on the fire types.
Yeah.
But being similar to a camel, I named him My Humps.
Wow.
Do what?
I said wow.
And then my last Pokemon that's currently on my team, I picked up a Swablu, and the name that I chose for the Swablu came from the Pokedex entry, which said that they are often found cleaning themselves with their cottony wings. So I named him Mr. Clean.
That's good. I love that. Oh man, that's great. I'm interested to hear also. That's a good team, man. You're scaring me a little bit. We're gonna see what goes on there. Austin, though, you based on your challenge, you've got a challenge going on. You want to explain what your challenge with your Pokemon is and what your team is on this?
Yeah, so historically, if people have listened, Gen 1 was one Pokemon, and the theme for that one was just he was the chosen one. Clearly, he wasn't chosen one of any good prophecy because he let me down pretty hard.
You were supposed to bring You were supposed to bring balance to the Force.
He got slaughtered by. I don't want to make Giovanni Obi-Wan. He doesn't deserve that honor. But anyway, Gen 2, I get 2 Pokemon, and my theme for that one was Dante and Virgil. So keeping to that, Gen 3, I get 3 Pokemon, and just to give anybody who's potentially listening a chance to guess it, the hint of this is, wherever there is injustice, you will find us. Wherever there is suffering, we'll be there. Wherever liberty is threatened, you will find...
The Three Amigos!
The Three Amigos! Which is going to be my theme for this one. My starter Pokemon was, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it's Torchic. I have it as a Combuskin now, and that is Lucky Day. And I also myself caught an Aron, whatever you want to call it. And now that has evolved as well. It's now a Lairon for me.
Yeah.
And that one is named Dusty Bottoms. I have yet to catch my Ned Nidolander, but that one should be very soon.
Nice. I freaking love that. I was so mad I missed Lucky Day. Like, I saw that and I didn't get the, like, I didn't recognize it until you gave me the hint later, and then I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a good theme. So yeah, Christian's over there with, like, a bunch, like, to his team. Like, he's maybe got a team planned out and maybe getting more. You're pretty near to your team. I'm feeling a lot less put together this one. I've got my whole team planned out. But I normally have caught, by the 4th gen, most of my team, but there's a few that I was leaning on kind of getting later in the game. We'll see if that comes back to bite me in the butt. But right now, of course, if you can pay attention, and process of elimination, I, of course, got Mudkip. I named him Kip Kip Hooray, because I thought that was cute. He's currently at his 2nd evolution, which is Marsh Stomp, but he's not far from evolving all the way. But, you know, I'm still doing my challenge where I'm trying to stay under the level of the leader we're fighting, and the 4th gym didn't allow him to evolve yet, so that's where he's at. And then I've got... I'll save him for later. So the next I've got a Manectric, which is like the little electric guy, but the 2nd evolution of that. I caught his little baby evolution, but now he's the kind of lightning thing, just because I don't know. It's a Pokemon I'd never used, and I like its design okay, and I needed someone to catch earlier, and I wanted to get some electric type coverage. There's some other interesting electric types that I liked, but I already had enough Pokemon that were like... A lot of the Pokemon I wanted were kind of later in the game, and I was like, I should have something early on. I'm already kind of leaning a lot of my team being caught late, so I caught him. Or her. Oh, yeah, that was part of the problem. The name isn't even a pun so much as, like, free word association. So, it's an electric Pokemon, right? And then, it's a girl. So, I was originally gonna get this Pokemon and, name it, okay, so y'all know Spider-Man. There's a character named the Shocker, right?
Yeah.
His mild-mannered name, his secret identity or whatever, is a character named Herman Schultz. I remember that specifically because the Spider-Man Herman Schultz was the passcode that would let you do, like, a skin swap for Shocker. So but I was like, oh, I can't name my Pokemon Shocker Herman Schultz because it's a girl. And I was like, so what's it? So the next association I went with was Herman Schultz. Sure sounds like Herschel. Herschel Layton is Professor Layton, but that's a boy too. And this is a lady Pokemon, so I will name her Ladyton. So that was the association to get to that. It's not even a pun anymore, it's like an ink blot, but that's...
It's a meta pun.
I don't even, it's like 5 layers too much, but that's the name, so it's Ladyton the Manectric. What's really, I can't remember which Pokemon, I had one Pokemon last gen that had a pun for a name, and it was too many levels deep that I genuinely forgot what the origin of it was. And then my final team member is, I'm kind of doing something stupid, but I think it's fun. At the risk of getting too far ahead, I don't want these games to get boring for me, so I'm trying each gen to interface with some of the new features in it, and get a little bit deeper into the meta, even though I just talked about how I don't like IVs and EVs, but I'm trying to play a little bit less casually, like each game, to keep myself from getting bored. And so to that end, I got a Shroomish that I named Umbrelloom, because it becomes Breloom, and I don't know, I thought it looked like an umbrella, so that's a bad pun, but there you go. But it's still a Shroomish, despite being level 29. I've actually put on it the Everstone, which keeps it from evolving. Specifically because a lot of people say one of the best moves, at the risk of like giving away strategy or whatever, one of the best moves that Breloom can get is Spore. But he can't learn it. And in this game, the move tutor can't teach a Pokemon something from a previous evolution. Like, if you evolve it too early, that move's just gone. And so Shroomish learns Spore, which is supposed to be a very good move for that character, at level like 50. And so I'm not, even though I've got a party member, I'm not going to let him evolve until like the end of the game, basically. I'm going to keep him in his baby form and go through the whole game kind of handicapped with the intent of trying to make him good for maybe like the final battle. Maybe it's a dumb idea.
Take off the weighted clothes right at the end.
Yeah, I don't know. It may be about it, and I'm not playing meta. This is not like to have the ultimate team. I just wanted to try. I remember last time we talked about, especially Austin, you ran into a problem where we evolved Pokemon too early, and you missed out on him having some good moves, and kind of learning from that situation, I wanted to see if maybe I could avoid evolving a Pokemon and see if that pays off in the end, or if I go, wow, that was not worth it. So, we'll see. But that's my team right now. I've got 3 more, maybe more planned out, but I just haven't bothered to get them yet, so. But yeah, so those are our 3 teams. I feel behind, but I'll catch up eventually. I guess related to that real quick, I mentioned before, but an interesting note about this is you can't carry Pokemon from Gen... You could carry Pokemon over from Gen 1 to Gen 2, but you cannot go from Gen 2 to Gen 3. So what you got is what you got, and especially before the remakes of Fire Red and Leaf Green came in, there was a pretty big hole in kind of what you were expected to get, and a lot of people got frustrated. Dexit is a big thing that happened with Gen 8 that people really felt strongly about, and this was kind of the original Dexit, but it hurts a little less bad when it's this early in the series. It kind of feels like a reboot anyway, and we also the future sights 2020, I guess, and we know that we're gonna get these Pokemon coming up pretty soon, a lot of them. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Can't get rid of old mons. Oh yeah, I guess it's worth mentioning for the completionists. We're not completionists. We're very casual. But one kind of scummy fact that's a little bit sad is before you just used to have Red and Blue to catch all the Pokemon, or Gold and Silver and maybe Crystal to catch all the Pokemon. You really have to play like 5 spin-off games to actually catch all the Pokemon in the decks for Ruby and Sapphire. So, you know, it's nice that there were so many spin-offs, and a lot of them are regarded well and are high quality. But if you're one of those people that does want to catch them all, it can feel a little exhausting to have to, like, play 5 separate 30-hour games to get one Pokemon that you can't catch in the game. You know, so, you can take what you can get what you got. I'm gonna spring this on you, Christian, out of nowhere, but, you often come at me with some interesting trivia about beta sprites. You got anything for me on this, Jin, or am I gonna have to wait till the next episode?
Yes, I've sent you some pictures. I'm hoping you can put them on the screen.
I will do that for sure.
Okay, wonderful. So first off, Torchic looked a little funny in this beta. So basically, picture Torchic as it is, but add bunny ears, like these weird, funny-looking ears, and there was a little like fire emblem on the back of its head. And I was looking around at just like information about these sprites, and I believe the little fire emblem on the back of its head was only for the male Torchics. So thought that was kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah, I found them also now. You don't have to necessarily resend them.
Okay.
Yeah, gender differences. I don't know if that popped up in this game or not, but it looks like they were at least thinking about it.
Yeah, I don't think, as far as I know, just off the top of my head, I don't think they officially put gender differences in the game, but based on what I've found on these betas, it was at least beginning conversations of something along those lines.
Nice.
Second,
And you got a second picture there, yeah.
yes, similar to Torchic, the final evolution, Blaziken, originally, I don't know if this design was for Blaziken or for a rough draft of like Latios, because this, I couldn't find an official name attached to it. But basically, they took this design and split it into Blaziken, and then the other side they put Latios and Latias, because they basically just took Blaziken's legs and arms and put it on Latias with some additional spikes, is just what it looks like.
Yeah, I see that.
With the character riding it. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I'd never heard anything like that. And then the only other real like beta I was able to find was for Trico, and it's pretty similar. These rough drafts make him look a lot more gecko-like, like a gecko you would find in the wild. And you can even see on one of them he has leaves coming out of his arms, similar to the his final evolution of Sapphire. So they were playing around with some designs that looks like they saved for later, but I thought that was an interesting point. And just while we're on the topic of fun facts, because you did mention the having to trade to be able to actually collect them all, Gen 3 was the first Pokemon game that they stopped printing the gotta catch them all on the box, because you cannot catch them all in the game alone. So there you go.
That is a good... Yeah, because that slogan, people still think of that today, but I guess it stopped basically in, like, after the 90s. That's wild. Dude, thank you for that trivia. That's some really interesting, cool stuff.
Of course.
Oh, man.
It's my job.
Alright. It is! I literally just put, as a note, Christian will talk about trivia about beta sprites. I didn't even know. I just knew he would, which I appreciate. It makes it better every time. Alright. Yeah, so I guess kind of before we wrap up, it's worth actually talking about, we've talked a lot about kind of the development and our teams and things like that, but the actual game, the story, the content, I thought maybe that was we're digging into what we've done so far. We're about halfway through, so maybe we've got an opinion. I guess first thing I want to ask is, I'll say, how are we feeling about Wally and May, our kind of duo rival crew? They're definitely different than, like, Blue and Silver in that, well, there's two of them, and they both seem not very antagonistic. Austin, big thoughts and feelings about Wally and May?
So Wally feels like that little brother that you're trying to, that like wants to do what Big Brother does, but is really, really bad at it. That's the impression I have of Wally, because I'm just like, he's super energetic, he seems to be being ushered around by an adult all the time, and when you fight him, or at least when I fought him, it was a complete joke. So I felt like he's just little brother energy. I still don't dislike him in any fashion, but I don't really see any... Like, I'm hoping, and it would be kind of funny, if the game bamboozles me and all of a sudden he's, like, really strong later. That would be cool, but he's just like a little kid to me.
Yeah.
And May, the one battle... I don't remember if there's been more than one battle with May so far, but...
There's been two.
I remember... Okay, I only remember one, and is the one that she wiped the floor with me.
Yes.
It sent me grinding for about 2 hours.
Yeah.
I don't remember the other battle with her, but that one, I'm just like, oh, hey, May, ouch, what did I do to you?
Well, that's what, no, I have in my notes here regarding May, it's one of my favorites. Early on, I have a note where it says, May asks if you want to battle and lets you choose yes or no. Oh, how the rivals have changed, is what I put in my notes. And then a little bit further down, I put, in all caps, May did not ask this time! I got bodied. Because that's what I felt, yeah. Because you're in the middle of a route, and you just turn a corner, and she's like, let's fight. And it's like, oh, crap. And for me, it was right after I'd done the trick house. So I was not healed up, and I just, like...
Fair.
Turned the corner, and it was just... yeah, all caps. May did not ask this time. Oh,
May
man.
gives off that energy where you beat them, and you're like, wow, you're bad at this. And then they lean forward in the chair. That's the same energy we got.
Yeah, she cracks me up. She's funny. But, yeah. Christian, any strong feelings on May or Wally?
It's funny. I didn't realize Wally was supposed to be a, quote rival. I thought he was just like, kind of like Austin said, this silly little kid. My first battle with him, I'm pretty sure he didn't use a single move that did damage. I think he just growled at me. Until he lost.
Oh my word.
Honestly, I just felt pity for him more than anything else. I was like, this poor kid. The adult, I think it's his dad that's walking around with him, is like, you need to just go home and just stay there until you do better. I just felt so bad for this kid. And then, May, I honestly didn't have too many issues with her. I felt my team was fairly balanced to overcome most of her typing that she had against me. Definitely a change of pace versus Gens 1 and 2, where the rival, seeing them invokes anger and, they just insult you constantly. Hey, loser.
Smell you later.
Yeah, smell you later. And May, and Wally they both talk so proper. They're like, oh, hey there, buddy. Let's have a battle. I think I'm doing better. How about we battle? It's definitely invoking a different emotion from the player versus Gens 1 and 2.
Do you feel like you like it worse or better, or it's just different? There's not really a qualifier on that.
It's just different. I'm kind of annoyed at how nice they are when they're supposed to be a rival. Maybe that's bad of me, but I'm like, we're not supposed to be friends. But that's my thoughts on it.
That's hilarious. Speaking of rivals and how memorable they are, there is one little bit of housekeeping we have to do, gents. And it's a section I call, Oops, we forgot to talk about our rival from Gen 2. I was editing the podcast, and I don't think we'll have strong opinions, but we do need to clean this up. I was editing the podcast, in the second episode of Gen 2, we say, oh man, which is right when we beat the game but hadn't done the post-game. We go, that's really weird. Silver, the rival, shows up and says, oh, have I misunderstood what Pokemon are all about? I don't know. And then leaves off confused and, runs away. We said, that's really weird. It feels like he didn't have a conclusive arc. He just kind of, shouts confusing things and runs off. I sure hope he shows up again and we actually get a conclusion to that arc. And sure enough, he does! He shows up again in the post-game and, talks about the power of friendship. And it's not, a good arc, but it does close the book on that arc where he talks about how he's learned to become friends with his Pokemon and they're more than just tools to power. And we flat out did not mention that even once at all in that podcast. So, real quick addendum. How do we feel about Silver's arc? It happened? Anything else, Austin?
You literally had to tell me he existed again today, so we can tell how big of an impression that left. Him being grumpy was more impressionable than him being I'm nice now.
I don't know if he's nice, but he's just I don't know, Christian, are you sad about all the Silver lore we missed out on by talking about back then?
I'm glad that he had a conclusion and that we weren't just left hanging on where he went with his life. It kept me up at night. I lost sleep over it. I would just wake up, look to my wife and say, what happened to my rival? Where is he? Did he ever understand the true meaning of friendship? And
no, you didn't make it that far because your wife is my sister, and at this point she's stuffed a sock down your throat. What were you going to say? Sorry.
Tears welled my eyes the day I saw him again and realized he did. He understands what it means to be a trainer.
Oh my god. Well, on that note, I guess we can finally close the book on that. Yeah, okay. Enemy team! That's another fun thing. They're different in each game. Christian, who did you have? I genuinely forgot which version everyone had.
Team Aqua.
How do they stack up to the illustrious Team Rocket, and Team Rocket a second time, but more confused and aimless?
Like, yeah, pretty much. Like, they feel... If Team Rocket is like the standard, like if Team Rocket is Walmart, then Team Aqua is Dollar Tree.
Oh my gosh. Alright, so you feel like we've had a major downgrade in teams, huh?
They just like... nothing they say makes sense. They're like, we want to flood the earth. And I'm like, you live here too.
So I have an interesting note on this, but I'll get to that in just a minute. Keep going, though.
It just... Their plans don't make sense. And they want to flood the earth. They don't use a single water-type Pokemon. Like, what's up with that? Like... You gotta put your money where your mouth is, Aqua. You're slacking. What are you doing? That's my thoughts.
That's hilarious. So I guess Austin, you must have dealt with Magma, right?
Yeah, in playing Ruby, I have Team Magma. They're pretty much playing the same tune on a different instrument. Instead of drowning the world, they wanted like erupt and burn everything with fresh lava to create new world and kill everybody. Which is horrible. But they actually use Pokemon that's kind of close to their type because they use, at least unless if I'm mistaking the types, they use the Hound Pokemon. And that's another
dark.
thought. Dark? Okay, whatever. They're dark.
They both
people
use
anyway.
dark. Yeah, all the villains use dark type, so.
They have the wolf. And I find it funny because when I was doing the volcano and then like all these people were getting into confrontations on my side, and it might be like the flip-flop for Christian here. Team Magma and Aqua are fighting each other, and like Aqua's trying to be the good guys and Magma's the bad guys. And they're just having like this giant battle royale on the volcano, but every single one of them is just using the same wolf, and I found that absolutely hilarious that nobody has a different type Pokemon. It's just all wolves everywhere barking at each other.
Yeah. So I've got Emerald, and it leads to some interesting changes. Because yeah, in one, Magma's good and Aqua's bad, and then in the other, it's vice versa. In Emerald, I've actually found the enemy teams to be more interesting than Rocket, because the dichotomy is they're both evil, and they're both like trying to like one-up each other and screw each other over. It's not like one's good and one's bad, or they flip-flop. They're both bad, and they're both doing bad things, but they're constantly getting in each other's way, and allegiances are changing. And I mean, it's Pokemon. It's not like Game of Thrones or some complex narrative. But it's kind of fun to see two evil enemy teams and their, like, conflicting ideas. Because in mine, it's like one, you know, like, oh, the volcano is Magma causing problems. But then, like, you go to, like, the submarine place, that town where they, like, kind of interrupt that, like, museum. And that's like Aqua, and it's kind of one and then the other, and they're yelling at each other and getting in fights and like espousing their views, and it's a little bit more fun to me that way than Rocket, but that's only because I have the special version this time, actually. Yeah, which does mostly lead into Emerald versions I want to talk about, but there's one other note I want to talk about, because we both talked about, y'all both talked about how their plans make no gosh darn sense. We're gonna blow up the land, we're gonna blow up a volcano and make a bunch of land, or we're gonna flood everything and make more sea, like, for plant life. Like, it just sounds goofy and unrealistic and unbelievable. But I watched a video that I'll link, that actually talked about kind of some of the inspiration for the teams. And it seems to be, now, like, this is maybe some conjecture involved, and I don't know how accurate this is, but it lines up. It seems to be vaguely based off of a old conflict that was in, I believe, even this region of Japan that this region is based off of, where basically there was a conflict between, there's a technique called land reclamation, which basically means, like, intentionally taking dirt and refuse and other things and like making islands and more land, you know, where there was just ocean before, right? And Japan's a very small place with a lot of people, and at this time, you know, in the 80s to, you know, the 90s, a booming economy as well, and so they're needing more land to like farm for the people that are there, right? You know, there's kind of a generational decline now, but that's a big thing, and so the government goes, hey, let's do some land reclamation and like try and get more land to get more farmland on. And so they start literally making more land and extending the coasts and making more islands, like as a government thing to try and increase prosperity, which kind of is a analogous to Team Magma. They want to make more land. Theirs makes no sense, but we'll get into that in a minute. But the root of the idea is make more land to support more people. But then on the flip side, there's a whole like cavalcade of people who make their money fishing in the fishing industry, and all this land reclamation is absolutely ruining the ecosystem around that area. And I don't even mean in a vague, in 400 years we might have slightly worse, like immediately, like the fish are dying, the reefs are dying. This is really disrupting a lot of the ecosystem, and arguably it's even impacting like the drinking water that's around there and the purity of the seawater that's there, and it's really affecting their business. And they're going, hey, listen, no, we need to protect the oceans because that's a big part of what we do, you know, our country's industry as well. And so there was this big fight kind of between this crew that was wanting the land reclamation and this crew that wanted to protect the integrity of the seas. And that conflict is nuanced and interesting and makes sense for two different teams fighting on. But because it's a children's card game, I know not really, but Pokemon game, it got turned into what if explode volcano to make much more land for fire, and what if flood world for fish. It got simplified so much that it becomes nonsense. But hearing about that idea in a series that was willing to let itself be a little bit more nuanced than I feel like Pokemon is willing to, I think that could have been a really interesting kind of dichotomy on these teams, and it makes me appreciate what they were at least going for a little bit more. I assume neither of y'all had probably heard about that, right?
I have not.
Yeah, I had never heard that before.
Does it make y'all, I'll ask Christian first, does it make you appreciate what they were going for a little bit more, or is it still like, well, that's nice and all, but what's in the game is pretty dumb?
I appreciate the idea a little bit more knowing that. Yeah, I feel like the execution could have been better.
Yeah, it leaves something to be desired. Austin, any strong feelings about hearing kind of the backstory between the teams?
A little bit more appreciation maybe on like the dev side about them caring about a little bit more of their, I guess their country's history. Yeah. But in terms of playing it, no.
Yeah. All right, that's fair. I just thought that was worth talking about because it made me appreciate, like, the story's dumb as heck. Like, even for Pokemon, it's pretty rough. But hearing that made me go, oh, I can at least see what they were going for. Because I did not see what they were going for kind of before I heard that. And like, this isn't straight out of the devs' mouths. There's some conjecture here from this video I saw, but it made me appreciate a little bit more what's going on. So yeah. On from that heavy topic to an even more terrible tragedy than the death of an ecosystem and two conflicting factions about a thing. Emerald has differences. The worst one is the phone is back for me. Not for you guys, just me. The phone is an Emerald. Worse, I can't choose who gets put in the phone. After a fight, it auto goes, I'm going to add my number to your phone, and they will randomly call me, and I can't delete them, and they're just there now.
Oh my word.
Yes,
I don't remember that.
Because it's only an Emerald! It's not in Ruby and Sapphire! People, you will not believe this, I didn't know this, people loved the phone so much in Gen 2 that they complained that it wasn't in Ruby and Sapphire. So Emerald was like, I guess we'll add it back in, and they did. I cannot believe this. Yeah. So that's horrible. Related to the Emerald changes, how have you felt about the difficulty of this game versus the other two? Have you noticed any, like, increases or decreases, or... Austin, how are you feeling about the difficulty on this one?
Well, I haven't caught my third Pokemon yet. That will probably end up helping me a bit in the difficulty scale. So fighting with two Pokemon, I felt like it's slightly harder this time around. I mean, I don't remember... Yeah, I don't think at all in Gen 2 a rival gave me any issue. but, May bodying me and sending me back to grind for hours was definitely a feeling. And then, if this is an appropriate time to bring up gyms...
yeah, this is a great gym.
One gym that caused me some grief, and that was Gym 4, which I'm trying to remember who that was.
Flannery. Flannery the Fire Gym and her spa, yeah.
Yeah, that was kicking my butt on that final Pokemon that she had. I would one-shot every single Pokemon ahead of time, but as soon as I got to that last one, I was getting destroyed with a combo of Attract, Paralyzed, and then Overheat.
What is her final Pokemon on that version?
I think it's one of the ones that she caught. It was like it reminded me of a camel.
Oh, Numel? Or Camera?
I think so. I might have to see a picture of it to remember. If I see it, it'll spark
I'll put it
PTSD.
on the screen.
But,
yeah.
It's just like, I'm gonna use Attract, and it would always work. It's like, well, this Pokemon can't attack anymore, and then would just die, and then my second one would come out, and it would paralyze me, and then RNG decided to hate me, and I would never get an attack off. Or if I did, it wouldn't be enough to one-shot it, and then it would just do Overheat and one-shot me completely. And it's like, it took me, I think, 4 attempts to finally beat that one. So having a rougher start compared to Gen 2 with 2 Pokemon in the early gyms and early fights definitely makes it feel like the difficulty went up.
Yeah. I actually had... Christian, I'll ask you first, and then I'll go next, and then... Sorry, I'll let you go last, Christian, because this is... I had a horrible time with Flannery as well. She was miserable hard. I had to keep resetting. I had to, do all kinds of insane strategies just to get through to her. But not for the reason you did, because, it turns out Emerald... people complain that Ruby and Sapphire didn't give you a lot of experience, so they doubled the gym, they doubled the trainers along the routes and stuff. Maybe not, but they added a ton of more experience to get. So, and if y'all remember, one of my goals, or one of my, missions is to stay under the level of the gym leader. And up till now, that's just meant don't overgrind for the most part, But in this case, I had to actively be dodging trainers. I had to be, even as far as going up the mountain. By the time I was at the mountain, I was 1 level away from the max level I could have in that gym. So I had to, be dodging all the trainers. I had to not fight them. I had to run away from all the encounters. I started grabbing some random Pokemon that I don't plan on using just to try and dump experience into them for the fights to, keep it from, leveling up. I had to avoid every trainer except for the ones you're forced to fight on the way to Flannery, and then I still had to use some of the junk Pokemon. I'd had to switch them in and swap them out to make sure I didn't level up too fast in that final battle, and I still finished nearly over-leveled. All that because Emerald had the opposite problem of Ruby and Sapphire, where I had so much experience I don't know what to do with it at all. Yeah, so that was my experience. Christian, do you have something closer to Austin or closer to me?
I would say kind of a blend of the two. I feel like the gyms... I really didn't have all that many problems with difficulty-wise. I think the majority of that is because of the Pokemon that I have. Having Sableye, Ghost-type, early on in the game, a lot of the trainers or even a lot of the gym moves that they tried to use had no effect on Sableye.
Yeah.
So I kind of breezed through at least most of the trainers. The gyms, some of them did give me some issues. The last one I did have to try, I think, maybe 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
But overall, difficulty-wise, I didn't run into as many issues, but I do see how the gyms... I do feel like the gyms operated a little better in this gen versus previous gens, if that makes sense.
I think the only one that gave me any... wasn't even trouble, but I was so annoyed at the one where they're like, oh, it's the dark, and you have to wander around. I'm like, fine, and they're like, if you beat a trainer, the light will get wider, and I was like, oh, cool. And then you do it, and it, like, moves 2 pixels wider, and I was like, oh, I hate this. It's so not worth it, man. But, you know, none of the, like I said, on Emerald Land, everything was a breeze. It is just stupid easy. Although, it's worth noting, one thing we mentioned, we did forget one new feature that is related to the gyms, which is the most interesting feature I think Pokemon's added before, which was a dad, who is...
A dad?
Yeah, so he's gonna be actually the next guy we take down. They really hype him up. You get to meet him even though you don't get to challenge him, and he's a gym leader, and I think that's a neat thing to give you a little bit more attachment to some of the gyms and give you a goal that's not like, just beat the game. It's like a good midway point that we're headed for right now is beat your dad who's a gym leader. And I don't know. I'm excited for that, but yeah, so far, for me, especially the gyms, it's been stupid easy, but that's not because I'm like a super genius, it's because I'm playing easy mode, apparently. So yeah, there's that. I think winding up, one of the last things worth talking about, I guess it's just a piece of trivia before we kind of go into our final thoughts here. But we talked about how dumb the TV fights were. You go through one of the routes and they like ask you. You do fight like a TV crew, but then they ask you like random phrases and things like that, you know. And it's really dumb. I put like, what did I put? Amnesia airlock, I think was my phrase. And it's like, they just like, what phrases do you like? And you pick some pre-made phrases, and then if you go to a TV, I don't know if any of y'all have seen this, but if you go to a TV, later it'll be like, wow, we interviewed this trainer, what did he say? Amnesia airlock. There you have it, folks! Like, it's... And I was like, what the falk is this? This is the stupidest crap. I really did not like it. But this thing reminded me, and there's no way to get around it, but unfortunately, we're not playing the games as intended. We can't be. We're not playing on the field, trading as you go along, discovering new things with our friends. We're handling this in a very different way than they were intended to be made. Because an intended feature is that once you get to that point and you lock in a passcode of some kind, when you do any trading with a friend, it doesn't just trade that Pokemon, it also trades little bits and pieces like that passcode and Pokemon you caught recently. So if you trade with a friend and then go about your day and check out the TV, it might say, we fought Trainer Austin, and he said, you know, whatever your passcode was, but it might also say, oh, and Dolan was on this route and he caught him a chop, and he said amnesia airlock, and cute little stuff like that would pop on. And especially in an age before Wi-Fi, that actually, it took a feature that I was like, this is so stupid, and turned it into like, oh, it would remind me of my friends and what they're doing despite not having internet, and it was cute. It made me a little bit more endeared to this feature that I thought was pretty stupid at first, so I don't know. I thought that was worth talking about, the fact that we have to acknowledge we're not playing these games as intended, but they're still, they had a lot of heart to them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so yeah, on that anticlimactic note, I think I've tackled all I want to talk about, or I've got on my itinerary. Either of you have anything you feel like I missed or is worth talking about in this first half of the game?
Well, back on the interview topic,
yeah.
I just had to say I had a funny time with them.
Yeah.
I think the first time I was interviewed, I remember jotting down one of their questions, which was, what does Pokemon mean to you? And I was trying to find the silliest option, and I just said, anime. My answer. And then the second time I ended up battling one, they asked me, what did you think of our battle? And I just found bored.
Oh,
no! It was a really fun time, and I'm looking forward to the next interview just so I can pick another really goofy answer.
Okay, that's pretty great. Oh, man. Any other big talks about the first half of the game, or we just want to go to kind of our final impressions and hopes and dreams?
What hopes and dreams?
Well, there's that. Alright, cool. Well, yeah, I'll talk about that. we got a second half of the game, and then, what are you looking for? What are you hoping for? I already mentioned I'm excited to fight Norman. I think that'll be fun. I'm kind of nervous, but also hoping my team comes together. I did a different strategy than normal, where a lot of my team is late game, and I'm kind of hoping I don't regret that and feel like, oh, great. That's part of the reason I had too much experience, is I only have half my team, basically. I've got the least percentage of a team right now compared to everyone else, so I'm hoping that comes together. But I'm having fun so far. I'm enjoying it more than where I was at the end of Gen 2, which excites me because I was really nervous I was going to be frustrated with the series. But I think intentionally choosing to do things a little bit more difficult and play a little bit more with some of the more advanced things has sparked another rekindling excitement for the series for me. So I gotta admit, the hype is back for me. Christian, what about you? Hopes, dreams, fears for the second half of this game?
Well, I'm definitely hyped. I am very excited for the rest of the game, the second half. I think in honor of us meeting Norman and fighting him next gym, our next episode should be titled "Daddy Issues." But no, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be good. I've enjoyed the nostalgia that I've already experienced, and looking forward to much more.
I love that. Austin, what about you as we're heading into this? Hopes, dreams, fears, don't care, it's a kid's game?
Well, I am looking forward to mainly finally getting the last member of my amigos, Ned Niederlander, which should be really soon, I think, that I'm able to catch him. So that's the big excitement point, and then just kind of seeing how the team plays in that kind of context. I'm enjoying having random goofy team themes and just rolling with those. Those are the most exciting parts of this particular runs for me. I'm looking forward to getting a rematch with May, and hopefully I can body her the way she bodied me the first time, so I can feel a little bit redeemed for myself. And yeah, those are the main things for me.
That's fantastic. Well, gents, thanks so much for doing this. I've had a blast. I'm excited because we finished. We actually caught up to this pretty quickly, but then had to wait to get to the podcast, so I've kind of been itching to get back to the game. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm looking forward to our next episode, and thank you so much for doing this with me, y'all.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Diglett, signing off.